You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast with Rich Ferraro.
Hello there and welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. It's Rich here and we are recording the morning after, the night before, the night when Nottingham Forest did something which I don't think any of us saw coming, which was they went to Sunderland, who in good form have had a great season, score lots of goals, and they beat them by 5-0. Yes, and look, there's lots to talk about in this match report, so we'll just get straight into it, and I'm going to introduce Katie Campbell from A View from the Clough Stand. Katie, what were you expecting going into the match, and how did you feel coming out of it?
I was talking to Tom before the game, and we were saying Forest are either going to scrape a 1-0 or it's going to be a 1-1, and I think the rest of us kind of agreed. So I don't think anyone actually expected what happened to actually happen, and then obviously leaving everyone's thrilled because everyone thinks that we've managed to claw away significantly from the relegation zone. So I think there's a really good feel within the club right now.
Yeah, it's difficult to dispute that. So let's just go through the team news. So essentially, it's as you were at the end of the Burnley match. So we had Matt Sells in goal. We had a back four of Ola Aina, Milenkovic with Jaya Cunha, and Nico Williams at left back. We had Hutchinson on the right and Morgan Gibbs-White covering the left-hand space, with Anderson and Sangare holding the midfield, and Igor Jesus playing sort of as a second striker, sort of as a number 10, behind Chris Wood. Were you surprised by that team news?
Well, after the second half against Burnley, not particularly. I think that's kind of what most people expected the team to be. We didn't know the extent of Murillo's injury, but I guess he's not fit to be playing right now.
Yeah, and we've been told that it was going to be at least one match, probably the first leg against Villa as well. So, and it has to be said, okay, now we'll sort of skip ahead a little bit because Jaya Cunha had to come off with what looked like a shoulder injury in the second half. But I have to say, the last 2 or 3 times I've seen him play, I've been so impressed for such a young player with not that much top flight experience. He's so composed and calm, isn't he?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when Murillo was first introduced to us. They're very similar, and I feel like normally when Murillo doesn't play, we kind of crumble and we don't really get results. Like, he's kind of the key that holds us together, especially away from home, I feel like. And I think Cunha's come in and he's really stepped up, and I think a lot of fans are happy with him being a Murillo replacement.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of putting it. The way I heard it described in one conversation is that he's almost like Murillo, but without the razzmatazz, without the kind of the extra pizzazz, in the sense of, like, at the moment, I think we've been told, haven't we, that Jair is capable of doing lots of great things, but he's at the moment what he's doing, he's realizing, I'm going to play it slow and steady. For example, he doesn't try too many fancy things. He is capable of passing and finding a teammate, which is obviously pretty important. But yeah, really, really impressed with him. But we'll come back to some of that a little bit later on. First 15 minutes were a bit cat and mouse, weren't they, Katie? And it has to be said that Sunderland probably looked more likely in that time. They had the first effort on goal by Chris Rigg, which was a left footer. He scored from that position against Villa last week, but he pulled his shot and it was a save at the near post by Matt Sells. On 12 minutes, Hutchinson cut inside after some good work by Igor Jesus and caused Roofs to make a decent save at the far post. And then after 15 minutes, there was good skill by Dan Ballard when Forest hadn't cleared a corner, but the shot was fluffed a little bit. So I say a bit cut and mouse. One of the things that I think is worth noting is that chance by Hutchinson. Now, I know that this is way down the far end, and away fans at the stadium are lighter up in the gods, so you probably needed your binoculars. But it was very clear then that Forest were seeking to try and press high against Sunderland when they were in their defensive areas, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think, like you said, Sunderland were on top, but I think there was a feel that we looked dangerous when we were on the break, or Sunderland actually gave us the ball quite a lot in their defensive half, and we looked quite dangerous from that. So I think we had a good feel like we could go on to do something.
And of course, goals change games because straight after that bit of skill by Ballard, which didn't lead to a decent shot by Sunderland, Forest went down the other end. Hutchinson won a corner, which he took as a 1-2, and it meant that he was able to put a deep cross into the far post. And Igor Jesus was at the far post, and we've seen him try to be at the far post for a lot of corners, but usually our delivery hasn't been that good. And this one, I mean, you wouldn't have known what was going on, and even on the telly, it wasn't clear at first glance. But essentially, Igor headed it back across the goal. It hit the back of Trey Hume's head and then went in for an own goal. And as I said a minute ago, goals change games, don't they? Because Forest were absolutely electric for the rest of that half, weren't they?
Yeah, well, as you can see from the other three goals that we scored, but we didn't know what was happening. Kind of just saw Jesus running off, and then obviously it comes up that it was a known goal. But we haven't really been great from corners, like you said. I think before the corner was even taken, I said, "Is this even going to be the first man?" And then we end up scoring from it. So yeah, it's just we a lot of teams are getting good from corners, and it's about time that we did, and we've actually scored from one. So I think it was
Yeah,
also a really nicely worked goal too.
yeah. I mean, basically, all I'm just going to say is that Sean Dyche was a set piece specialist, apparently. So leave that there. Okay. So yeah, I say that's typified. The first sort of few attacks typified the way Forest were going to capitalise in that half. So quite a lot of interceptions on Sunderland were trying to play it out, putting pressure high up, created opportunities. So Jesus and Hutchinson in particular were pressing against Alderete and Hume on the left side of the Sunderland defence. And of course, because we had that kind of slightly lopsided approach where Morgan was kind of he's playing on the left, but obviously he wanted to come inside. I noticed that Anderson, who obviously often drifts to the left of central midfield, he was helping to cover those areas, and therefore, it kind of caused an overload on the other side. But Forest were attacking from all sides, and there was another shot which came from that pressing on 21 minutes when Chris Wood could only kind of direct it straight at the keeper. But on 30 minutes, the pressure counted again. So Roos tried to make a pass out to his centre back. Wood intercepted. It's a soft pass. It wasn't a good pass, but Wood was there, and the ball kind of deflected off him, went out to Morgan, who played a delightful first time pass, and he gave everyone the eyes in doing it as well. There's a really good camera angle that Sky had of Morgan just kind of you can see the focus and the way he was addressing the ball. You could be forgiven for thinking he's about to shoot. And they asked him in the post match interview, "Were you going to shoot?" He goes, "No, Woody's a pro. He's better at finishing than me." And I would also like to say that the finish by Chris Wood is actually much better than it looks at first glance because you think, all right, he gets the ball and Roos comes out to him and he slots it past him. But not only does he make a decent first touch, you can see he shifts his body weight to his right shoulder, which means that Roof's immediately kind of semi-committing himself. And then with that little bit of space that's created, he uses his left foot to just poke it past and the ball rolls in. And so composed by both Morgan and Wood, and also obviously a really good result in terms of getting the goal. Also worth pointing out is one of only 7 touches that Chris Wood had in that first half. So this is a little bit like under Nuno, isn't it? Whereby he might not get the chance to do much, but what he is doing is massively making an impact.
Yeah, well, that just shows how much we missed him when we didn't have him. If he's scoring with, I didn't know that, scoring with one of his only 7 touches. But I think across the away end or around me, people, Sunderland were giving us the ball quite a lot from their own mistakes, and we were getting quite frustrated that we weren't capitalising because obviously we didn't know the way the game was going to turn out. So I think we were getting quite frustrated, and then that was kind of the perfect opportunity. And like you said, the pass from Morgan's brilliant, and then the finish from Woody is even better because Roos is literally in his face and he's managed to poke it past him. And
Yeah, absolutely. I've made a note here that I made on 32 minutes. Forest have swagger. So 33 minutes, a short corner to Anderson, back to Nico Williams, and at the back stick, Jesus had pulled away. And again, the Sky kind of analysis by Redknapp and Dawson pointed out that Milenkovic actually he put the cat amongst the pigeons with his movement, which created the space for Igor to come. And I have to say, when I saw Igor was about to get a free header at the back stick, I thought he needs to put that back across the goal into the far post. And you know what? I've been critical of Igor because he hasn't done that enough. Sometimes when he's got headers in those positions, it's a bit soft. So this time, he was very, very aware of the fact that Morgan Gibbs-White was hovering just near the penalty spot, and he fired home on the half volley. And Dreamland, it must have been absolute chaos in that away end at this point.
yeah, it was. We obviously no one expected that, and those two goals came in such short time. So it was just carnage. Everyone was kind of everywhere. No one really knew what was happening. But the finish from Morgan, looking back, is a brilliant finish as well. And I feel like the way at the end of this season, the reason that we're doing so well is down to him. And I think now he's scored more than any other Premier League player in 2026, and across the season he's also England's leading goal scorer. So I feel like it's a little sidetrack, but it's becoming really hard for Tuchel to ignore him and not take him to the World Cup if he carries on the way he's going.
Yeah, and obviously we talked about this in this week's episode of Yates's Espresso Bar. One of the key things I think is that, well, essentially, I think that Morgan, if he's part of that World Cup squad, he will just relish it. He'll enjoy it. He will know that he's probably the third or fourth choice to play at number 10 or in one of those attacking positions for Tuchel. But whereas a Foden or a Palmer might get a bit mardy about it, I think Morgan will just be like, hey, I'm here. I'm going to enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and I feel like some players, they know they're going to get picked for England no matter how poor they perform. I feel like Palmer knows, even though his performances have been pretty shocking this season, he's still going to play for England. Whereas there's people like Gibbs White and potentially Rodgers. I know he's playing well and he's probably going to get in, but before they will have that fight to want to go play and be in the squad, no matter if they get started or if they're on the bench or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, we've still got another goal to talk about. So it was another set piece on 37 minutes. The ball was popped in, and then it broke back to the edge of the box where Ola Aina had an effort with his left foot. It deflected and to Jesus, who again was at the far post. And just like Morgan Gibbs-White's second goal against Burnley, there is a controlled shot where he got power and direction, and yes, it was kind of towards the keeper, but it had enough power that Roos could only just kind of deflect it, and it went in. And again, in my notes, I've put WTF, and Matt in our group chat put "What is happening?" In all capital letters. 4-0. After 6 minutes where we got 3 goals. Absolutely crazy stuff, Katie.
Yeah, just like the third goal, everyone was everywhere. I think the expression was just people's just jaws were just open. No one really knew what was happening because it was completely unexpected.
And just as the board was held up at the end of the half for 3 minutes of stoppage time, worth pointing out that Anderson did have a tussle with Xhaka in the box. It was clumsy rather than anything else. VAR had a look, but nothing, very quick look, but nothing, didn't ask the ref to have a look at it again or anything. I think it's one of those, if the ref had given it, VAR probably wouldn't have overturned it, but, it's one of those. I think it's also worth pointing out that, obviously it's a good night for Anderson as a Geordie going to Sunderland, but yeah, he did two or three challenges were just probably the wrong side of the line. The other thing I'd like to point out at this moment is that just before half time came along, Mrs. Ferraro had been out. She'd double booked herself, so she'd been out for a bit. And on her way back, she'd looked at the score before she got in the car, and saw that it was 0-0. So as she comes through the door on about 42 minutes, I just say, "Come and have a look at this," and she absolutely could not believe it. So at half time, it was 4-0. Yes, 4-0 to Forest.
The 1865 match report.
Right then, Katie. In the second half, we saw a couple of changes, one for each team, and the one that Forest made was bringing Nico Dominguez on for Ibrahim Sangare. Initially, I thought that was thinking about the Villa match again in the Europa League, but apparently there is a minor niggle, so hopefully it's precautionary. Also worth pointing out that Dominguez got booked almost straight away, and I shall come back to that in a minute. And then on 50 minutes, that's when Cunha had this tangle with Brian Brobby, and that's when he injured his shoulder. So we saw Morato come on. And it has to be said that the Sunderland fans grumbled at their team at the halftime break, and there's a little bit of toing and froing between a couple of their players and the crowd because the atmosphere is a bit angsty. But in the second half, those first kind of 10-15 minutes, the fans really, they are good fans and they got behind their team, and it actually inspired the home team to come at us a little bit. Sunderland had changed their formation slightly with their substitution. They'd taken off Chris Rigg and they'd put on Reinildo, who's a left wing back, and so they kind of went to three at the back to kind of try and shore up, but also add a different type of attacking impetus. And yeah, they pressed us a little bit more, and Alderete had a shot which was relatively easily saved, turn and shot, which relatively easily saved by Sells. And then Anderson, as I predicted, got a booking on 57 minutes. There's another booking for Igor Jesus after a late tackle on 59 minutes. And this led to probably the big talking point of the second half. Now, again, I'm going to keep in mind that this is a long way from the away fans, so you'd be forgiven for not knowing what went on. So, from the tackle that Jesus made, Xhaka took the free kick. The ball bounced a little bit around. Mukiele kind of got a shot in, and then Ballard, the ball bounced up, and Ballard headed home the second ball. So initially, you look at it and you go, well, Mukiele was offside. Except semi-automated offside wasn't working. It's like, and the commentator is Seb Hutchinson on Sky. He was going, apparently it's not quite working, and me and Mrs. Ferraro going, it can't be not quite working. It's either working or not, and it wasn't. So it was decided that the defender Milenkovic in the middle of the box was playing Mukiele on. Fair enough. But what was intriguing is that when Mukiele slid in to put the ball towards the goal, as he slid through, Sells parried it, but as he slid through, Mukiele's leg caught Sells, which meant that Sells was unable to punch the ball before Ballard headed it in. And it took a long time to kind of identify that. As soon as I saw that, I thought, it's not deliberate, but it is a foul. He has taken the keeper out. And by the time that, and then VAR recommended that Darren England go to the on-pitch monitor to have a look. Now, Sky Sports said it's controversial and ridiculous, and I'm just thinking that's just making headlines when there aren't any to be made. That, to me, it was pretty obvious. I'm sure you've seen the replay by now, Katie. Again, I'm guessing you had no idea what was going on at the time, but you've seen the replay and you think, yeah, there's not much to argue with.
Yeah, well, at the time, we thought that they'd got a goal back, and then the rest of our players just didn't seem bothered. And then Sells literally sprinted up to the referee and was kind of, we thought he was asking for handball because he was kind of like sweeping his hand, but it must have been like, oh, he's taking me out. And I feel Sells can be like talk to the ref, but I've never seen him like that adamant that he's been fouled. And then on replay, like you said, he completely swipes through him, and Sells kind of just looks like he's just flying through the air. So I completely agree that it's a foul.
Yeah, because if you're a Sunderland fan, you're probably going when that VAR decision was ruled out. You're going, yeah, there's nothing happening tonight. Okay, and then so after that, okay, it wasn't controversial or ridiculous. So that was just Sky trying to make a situation where there wasn't one. Yates and Nets came on for Jesus and Hutchinson. It meant that Forest moved to five at the back, something we hadn't seen before. Ola playing right centre back and Nico on the right wing back and Nets as the left wing back. We were joking in the group chats that it was a bit of insurance as Morato's playing at centre half. But I think it's fair to say that Sunderland were having a bad day at the office. So even with Captain Calamity out there, even if he'd had the worst match he's ever had, yeah, as I say, I think it's fair to say that Sunderland probably weren't going to get much change out of this one. And then in a couple of my group chats, there was a bit of talk about, you know what, I'm still nervous. And a couple of people on social media going, you can never relax. But I actually thought that after those subs, there was really, really good game management from Forest. And if the first half was brilliant opportunism and superb high pressing, the second half was basically what I can best describe as S-housery in the defensive sense. It was a bit Nuno-esque, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I was one of those people who thought, God, I don't trust Forest. But then obviously as the game goes on, you get slightly more confident.
The other thing that didn't help, and I did it affect the results in any way? No, but was it annoying and unnecessary? There were 7 bookings in that second half. The referee just went card crazy, and if you look at each one in isolation, you can see why each one was given as a booking. But it wasn't that kind of match, was it? It's completely unnecessary.
Yeah, I feel like the referee only gets cards out like that in a derby or in a really heated match, but that was completely the opposite yesterday. I think he was just very card happy for the wrong reasons. The only player that really kind of deserved their booking was Anderson, but that was pretty expected.
And Anderson, it was basically totting up. He did 2 or 3 kind of dodgy tackles. I was a bit worried there a couple of times when, after being booked, Dominguez was sailing close to the wind, I thought. And it's one of those, isn't it? The ref's giving out all of these cards, and you just think, if there's a red card from this match, it would be so unnecessary. And bearing in mind that we're already light on personnel, that, wouldn't have been helpful. It wouldn't affect the Europa League, but it wouldn't have been helpful for the league campaign. So yeah, Nico Williams, Elliot Anderson, Igor Jesus, Nico Dominguez, and Ryan Yates were the men in the book for Forest. And Xhaka got a booking for dissent, for turning around and kind of waving his arm at the ref, which again, completely unnecessary. And Diarra as well got a booking. Diarra was actually substituted, and Wilson Isidore came on 85 minutes. He had a turn and shot. It was a decent save by Sells, but relatively routine at the near post. And then the best save that our Belgian keeper had to make was a 20-yard half volley by Enzo Lefebvre. Worth pointing out stats-wise that Forest had 10 shots in the match. Sunderland had 14. Sunderland had 4 shots on target, and I'd say a couple of routine but good saves by Sells, 1 decent save by Sells, and Forest had 6 shots on target, and they scored 5 goals. So yes, you can make of that what you will. On 88 minutes, Taiwo Awoniyi came on for Woody. I'm surprised that Wood had played that long, but I'm assuming this is kind of something that has been planned as part of his return to fitness. There was a brief VAR check against Milenkovic on 89 minutes after a tangle with Brobby, but it was just a tangle. And then on 95 minutes, everything was rounded off very nicely. There was some good work on the break by Taiwo and Nets. Nets' cross actually wasn't the best. It went behind the players in the box, and then it looked like the chance might have gone. But then Nico Dominguez was sweeping up, played the ball to Awoniyi. Awoniyi set himself up to shoot, but actually did a no look pass to Anderson, who's behind him, who passed the ball home, and that was in front of the away fans. And it felt like an emotional moment for the fans, but obviously for the young Geordie midfielder playing in the Stadium of Light just the week after losing his mum. A special moment for him.
Yeah, it was a really nice moment to see. Obviously, it was good that Elliot scored because of his history. He's a Geordie playing at Sunderland, but also, like you said, because the way he just lost his mum. So I think it was pretty written in the stars for Anderson to score.
Yeah, and a nice way to round off a 5-0 away victory.
The 1865 match report.
Now, for review from the opposition, it's time to go over to Dylan, who very graciously agreed to give us a little view from the home end.
Looking at the initial starting 11, I thought that's about as strong as we could put out. To start off, I want to make it known that all 5 goals were, absolutely deserved tonight on yours. I thought the defending was leggy, but we have, if you look on sources such as the Northern Echo, we have had a bug going around the Academy of Light, which, I mean, that wasn't known until after the Villa game. Anyway, I thought, onto the game. I thought, first 10 minutes, we did well. He's tried to catch us on the break a couple of times, but we did our normal press, trying to take it through the channels, linking up with the fullbacks, trying to get it into the box, and then hopefully you could see the plan. The plan was to try and get Brian Brobby to hold the ball up in the box and try and square it back out to one of the double pivots, or out of the wings again to try and get a shot off, which, I mean, you could definitely see from when Chris Rigg fired it into cells about 10 minutes. And then sort of after that, it was like Hume, I thought he had an all right game, but he certainly struggled in tempering Omari Hutchinson. I thought he looked very lively. I was told before the game he can be a bit hit or miss for you guys, but he certainly hit the mark tonight. And just corner after corner on that right hand side, and eventually, one came off well, and I think after the third, to be fair, I stopped really watching. Like, I was watching, but like I just don't even remember the goals just going in. I remember after Wood pressed Roos for the second, and they just kind of gave up. I thought it was very timid from our back line. He brings Isidore on in the second half to change the game. Finally onto the referee. I think, look, like, I think 50-50s were going your way, but I think that's purely just down to just the drive of wanting it more and the momentum just swinging your way. I think, with that, our players, after the third goal, for example, went straight to the linesman, asking for a VAR check. It's just, you're never going to get it, especially when you have the rub of the green. I thought the referee himself, I think he's the only referee we've had where he's never officiated a win for us this season. So, yeah, but I thought if I'm gonna wear my Sunderland tinted glasses, I think Nordy couldn't help the fact that his follow through obviously took out Sells, and maybe on that regard the goal should have stood. He probably will disagree, but yeah, I think that's about as the only positive of the night really for a Sunderland standpoint. I'd give them all no higher than a 2, maybe a 3 out of 10, and that's being optimistic.
Okie doke, Katie. So let's just do a little bit of rounding off here. So full-time fist pumps from Vitor Pereira and the fans singing his name. Vitor's Red and White Army, a song that we've heard a lot in the last 2 or 3 matches. Something which we'll kind of come back to in this week's edition of Yates's Espresso Bar. There's not that many managers recently who've had the Red and White Army song with their name added. And you know what? I was thinking about it before the match about what kind of impact Vitor has made, and like there's an obvious contrast whereby Deitch had that kind of sergeant major, very rigid tactically, only one way of playing. Now, Ange was a lot more of a laid back kind of guy, but he only really had one way of playing as well. Nuno only really had one way of playing, or one way of playing effectively. So Vitor is probably the first manager since Stevie Cooper, when we're in the Championship, who has found different tactics and formations according to the personnel he has available and according to the situation. And that's something that's, I think that's something that's not to be ignored.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think he's got really good in-game management as well. Like he knows when to make the right substitutions, and they clearly affect the game. Like yesterday, you can see when Yates came on, he had a good game, and then so did Nets. He also just allows the players to go out and express themselves and play with freedom, and that's something that we didn't really see under Daesh. He kind of like made them play a specific way, but I think Vitor's come in and been like, go out and express yourself and show people what you actually can do.
Yeah, and so a couple of observations there. The first one is picking up on what you said. Luca Netz, um, he hasn't played. He's played virtually no minutes. He's got a little bit of here and there, but it's only been a few minutes here and there. But he came on last night, and he didn't look like a player who either was demoralised at not playing or was determined to kind of prove a point and therefore went in overexcited and got himself in the book or whatever. He actually was pretty steady, pretty calm, as they contributed to the final goal. And you couldn't see that happening under Deitch, could you? Like, or even under Ange, and even under Nuno, when players were not part of that first team picture, and then they were relied upon, you could tell that there was, they'd been left out in the wilderness. So it seems like Vitor's kind of really created a team ethic whereby, it's squad goals, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like when he does interviews and stuff, he always talks about togetherness. And I feel like a lot of managers talk about this togetherness, but when you actually really see it is when it matters. And I think we are seeing it, and we're seeing it at the right moment. And I think the squad are really there for each other. Like we saw last week when Anderson's mum passed away, everyone was there for him. Everyone was putting an arm around his shoulder, and especially yesterday when he scored, every player apart from Sells came over and gave him a hug and congratulated him. And I think there's a really strong bond in the team, but also between the team and the fans right now.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing that's worth pointing out is that pretty much any of the, how many, 16 players who came on the pitch, there wasn't a single one who was less than a 7 or 8 out of 10. That was really because again in the group chat we were talking about who was the man of the match, and I was going, well, obviously Morgan and Nico are the man of the match most weeks, and they were really, really good again. And then in the chat, the Maradon, the Midlands, and Baz in particular, were going, well, Ola probably had one of his best games in ages, and then Baz was going, yeah, Igor as a number 10 is brilliant, and then actually Milenkovic was really, Sels was really good when he was required. Cunha was superb until his injury, and then just became, as actually it's just a really good team performance, wasn't it? And at a time when we're at the business end of the season, you really do need all of your players to contribute, don't you?
Yeah, I also struggled to find a man of the match last night. We was discussing it, and my dad was like, Igor goal assist, but I was like, I genuinely can't pick. They've all played really well, and they've all contributed what they're meant to contribute.
Yeah. So Charlie Eccleshare, who's a journalist for The Athletic, he put on Twitter last night, and he covered Spurs, and I think he's a Spurs fan. Um, he put the screenshot of the goal flash saying Sunderland nil, Nottingham Forest 4, brackets Jesus, and he put, it's rare to see a scorer that's also the same word you say when seeing the scoreline. And scoring 9 goals in 2 matches is like, if you're a Spurs fan, you're just going, we could hit a run of form and we're still not going to be able to get out of trouble, are we?
Yeah, I think I saw yesterday that 20% of our goals this season have come in the last two halves of football we've played, which is a ridiculous stat. And just shows that we haven't been scoring enough this season. But then when it comes down to it, we actually do know where the goal is.
Yeah, I think it's something like after the Spurs match a few weeks ago, it's just over a month ago, and after that match, I think the stat was 20% of our goals in the league this season had come against Spurs. So yeah, and but
So that one as
odd,
well.
oddly enough as well, okay, we're talking all competitions rather than just Premier League, but with 15 goals each, I think it's 15 and 14 or 15 each. Gibbs, White, and Jesus. Forest have got 2 players who've hit that many goals, and even other high-scoring teams haven't managed that. So that's there's an argument there. Actually, we'd rather have the goals more distributed through the rest of the team. I think it's worth pointing out, though, Igor Jesus as a number 10, he looks, we keep saying it, but he looks so much more comfortable there, doesn't he, than leading the line. And it does beg the question, could we have played him off Taiwo, for example, at times early this season? And it feels like, he's had a really good season in terms of his contribution, but it almost feels like that's been a wasted opportunity until we've had to wait for Chris Wood to come back.
Yeah, just a bit. I think we're really seeing the best of Jesus when he's been playing in this 10, and I think even when he was leading the line, most people could see that not being played out of position because he does know where the back of the net is. But he does look a lot more comfortable as a 10. And going back to what you said about Jesus and Gibbs White contributing the goals, I think that's quite similar to last season when we was quite reliant on Chris Wood when he scored 20 goals and then the rest of the players were on like 4 or 5 or whatever. Um, and without him this season, we've really needed someone to step up. And yes, most of Jesus's goals have come in the Europa League, but he has contributed in the Premier League as well as Gibbs White. So it's good to see that someone else has kind of stepped up.
Yeah, and crucially, I think playing as a 10, when he's up there as kind of the last man, the reason he scored goals in the Europa League and not in the Premier League is because Premier League defenders are big and strong, and if you're right up against them, he's not the kind of player to kind of make that instant decision and instant shot accurately most of the time. However, by having that extra bit of space, he's really reaping the rewards from that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I also feel like when he was playing as a 9, he likes to drop deep and he likes to link up play. So when he was doing that, he's the striker, he's the one that's meant to be in the box, meant to be forward, but then he's come drop deep to link up play, and then there's kind of no one really there to play the ball forward to when he's kind of more
Yeah.
in the midfield.
True. Okay. And just to finish off, a couple of people on this is on Reddit actually said you've got these Premier League managers in the dugouts with iPads and screens and all of that. And you know what you notice about Vitor? He uses a pen and paper. He's got one of those big four-color biros. And so, yes, let's put it this way: Vitor wins on pens, and yeah, he's. We'll talk more about him in Yates's espresso bar, but he's certainly giving the Forest hierarchy something to think about. Because if we stay up, and I'm not going to say it until it's mathematically certain, then Vitor Pereira has outperformed all of our expectations, hasn't he, Katie?
Yeah, I think after he got sacked from Wolves because they didn't win a game in however he many games he had this season, maybe like 10 I think it was. I was a bit I was a bit unsure But then since he's come in, I feel like he's really understood the club. And like I said earlier, he's really told the players, yeah, he's implemented his tactics and his way of playing. But I think it's really crucial that he's come in and he said, play with freedom, play the way that you want to play.
Yeah, cool. All right, so thank you very much to you, Katie. Thank you to Dylan, our Sunderland fan, for providing the view from the opposition, even though you almost certainly didn't want to. And we will be back with a visit to Yates's Espresso Bar in midweek before that all-important and that big night at the City Ground where we will be playing Aston Villa in the Europa League semi-final. So thank you for joining us for this match report, and come on you Reds!
You've been listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps other listeners find our content.